Now, listen up and buckle up. Because we, my friends, are in the liminal zone. The liminal zone. Liminal is a word that is derived from the word limen, or limen, which means threshold. The liminal zone then indicates that we are in a period, a duration, an experience of threshold. And it is, or we are, neither prior to nor after the threshold. We are in it, we are with it, and we are of it. And so when we are of the liminal, the contexts that anchor our lives slacken or are sometimes lifted entirely. So specifically, what I mean as examples of the liminal zone, here we are in the week wherein the sun is both furthest from us and also making its return. We are stepping out of our workaday lives to indulge in our culture's most celebrated holiday. We are still in the shadow of unbelievable tragedy. And we are still in shock and still in mourning. And yet we are sensing the culture shift in its wake. We have returned to or received our larger families. And there are thresholds aplenty in family reunion. And we are here in church. We've stepped out of normal time into this room where we make of time something more, something sacred and dear and thoughtful. These are all, in some greater or lesser fashion and degree, experiences of liminality. Liminality is the territory of the sacred. Stepping out of time, moving through grief, interfacing with family, coming to church. Sacred. Full throttle liminality is a religious experience. So I would say that religious experiences, then, are experiences beyond relativity, experiences of the hyper-present, without the contextual anchors of time, place, culture, or history. Now, it is perhaps ironic that the doorway or the path into such an encounter is built quite intentionally with these very tools of context, time, place, culture, and history. Each of these elements of context come with embedded stories, and in fact are understood only by stories. So the doorway or path into the liminality of a religious experience is built intentionally of story, communicated through various kinds of media. But the event itself, the experience that these intentionally religious stories usher one into, is non-contextual. To put it another way, using various media, we build stories that launch us out of our stories and into a perspective beyond stories. In fact, beyond words. Sounds great, and I think it is great, but it comes with a problem. See, on return from this encounter, we are left with an impossible task. For it is impossible to put into words an experience that is beyond words. We are faced with contextualizing that which has no context, relating that which, by its relation to all, each and every at once, is incomprehensible in isolated experience. I say incomprehensible. The encounter with the sacred and divine is beyond comprehension, but it is well within experience. And then you return. We find that the experience has affected us. The encounter reinforces or changes the way we relate to the world. It influences and perhaps even determines our behavior. And the more we experience this encounter, the more we are influenced by it. And it feels good. And it seems to make us more compassionate and more here. And so we wish to do it more often, and we wish for ways to process it together, which is to say, discuss it. But as we've noted, the experience defies our descriptions and resides, in fact, most potently in symbol and myth. And so in this way, humans have been trying to wrestle the liminal experience into words since the dawn of language, and we've been doing it to various degrees of success. In fact, none of the descriptions are likely quite right. I think that's why we are all probably in this building. And it would seem that the more precise and meticulous the description, the less accurate it is. Especially in an arena such as this, where the measure of accuracy is its power to induce the experience it describes. I think we Unitarian Universalists are particularly in tune with this idea, that the more particular the description of the sacred experience, the less likely it is to be an accurate description, which is to say, effective and rich description. However, that we are in tune with this idea does not mean that we are not among those who do try and describe the holy. We do try and describe it. And so we too struggle to tell the story of the experience of being beyond stories. In fact, we may struggle more because outside of evolution, we do not have a cohesive vocabulary of symbol and myth. And as mythic vocabulary, evolution is only just now being developed. So one of the reasons why we do not have or have jettisoned much in the way of symbolic and mythic vocabulary is because I think we, Unitarian Universalists, often mistake the story for the experience the story is supposed to induce. And then we are dismayed and disappointed. It's sort of ironic that we get upset with biblical literalists when in fact we are very much biblical literalists. We read the Bible and we say, that can't literally be happening. So we mistake a mundane representation for a cosmic experience. We mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the scene of the moon. And particular to this season, we mistake the story of the birth of Christ for the experience of liberation and innocence. And then we are disappointed and dismayed. The virgin birth. It's not possible. We know that it is not possible for a woman to spontaneously conceive. And we do not, by and large, put much credence in a God that is gendered or one that alters the laws of nature. And so we religious liberals indulge the Christmas story as a tale for children or the childish and fascinate ourselves instead with investigating the possible actual historical provenance of what we frequently imagine as the greatest, wisest hippie to have ever lived. Yet as fascinating as such investigations are, and they are fascinating, we miss the encounter. The virgin birth does not have to be factual or even pretend to be historical for it to be true in mythic terms and effective religiously. It doesn't need to be biologically possible for it to be religiously powerful. It's a tool to help us encounter liberation. It's kind of like a Christian koan. So a koan is a sort of riddle employed in Zen Buddhism with the intent of launching the riddled one into the liminal zone, which they call satori, or enlightenment. Is that enlightenment? So we get, what is the sound of one hand clapping? That's a koan. Or how can an experience experience? Or how was your face before your parents were born? Or how is there a virgin birth? So the virgin birth is an attempt by the author of the Gospel Luke. It's the only gospel that the story of Christmas is in. It's an attempt by that author to convey what is impossible to convey, and indicates as much by putting an impossible event at its center. So surely the author taps into the mythic forms and plot points that are not only archetypal, but were familiar to both Jews and Gentiles at the time. It's as if the author was saying to the prior two Gospels, pretty good work, guys, but you're just setting an example. I am going to set the table for an encounter. And my hero, then, must be entirely innocent, and so must be impossible, for we are entirely innocent. And yet our innocence is entirely impossible. And so we then turn the teacher, the freaky rabbi from Nazareth, into the Christ. The highest, the most powerful, and the most vulnerable. That's impossible. The liminal, given lineage, impossible. Beyond words, becoming the word, that's impossible. The virgin birth, impossible. Impossibility inviting us to revelation. It's not a question of whether or not we believe. Of course we don't. Well, of course I don't believe in the virgin birth. So it's not a question of faith. It's a question of encounter. For the birth is yours. And the innocence is yours. The power to love is yours. To forgive, to reconcile, to destroy and create paradigms. The possibility of liberation from your contexts, from time and place and culture and history, and to experience whatever that is, and to allow that encounter to affect the way you live, behave, and relate to each other and the world. That power is yours. That, in one vocabulary, is the experience of Christ. And so we are in the liminal zone. We are in the week of transition, the threshold between the recession and the return of the sun. We are in the shadow of monstrosity. We are in the story of an impossible event that invites us into innocence. We are in that part of our worship wherein we invite words to set us free of words, where we hope to encounter something that impacts our lives, the liminal zone. We carry within us gifts of immense power, and our journey to deliver these gifts into the world is fraught with disappointment, desperation, and exertion. We have come together as a community of faith in order to encourage and assist each other. And this is a season to celebrate that, for here we have hope of discovering the Christ within each of us, of discovering that being we may anoint as our gift to ourselves and the world. And this is impossible. And it is necessary. It is our hope. It is our present, and it is our present. What a gift. Merry Christmas.